YouTube. Welcome to the second episode, finally, of Digivolve Your Game. Today, we're going to talk about deck building. We're going to continue off from episode 1, which is overcoming bricking, a very contentious topic in the community and card games in general. If you guys want to watch the first episode, I'll link in the description. But yeah, before you can even get to the brick stage, before you can even get to the let's play at a big tournament stage, you have to start at ground zero and literally build your way up. And when I say that, I mean building your deck. And people might think that building your deck all willy-nilly is fine. Well, those people are wrong. You need to do so with purpose, with proper intentions, and with analysis. So that's what today's episode is going to be about. It's going to be about how to build your deck for combating any meta. And this is general, not just in Digimon, but like any card game as well. You could apply the same principles to. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. If you do, like, comment, subscribe, turn the notification bell on Smash Potatoes. That way you know when all these amazing Digimon videos go live. I'm also going to use this opportunity to shamelessly plug both my Patreon and my Metafy. As y'all know, I am a good Digimon player. As y'all know, I just joined Luxury Gaming and I'm now on a sponsored team of Digimon players. I topped the last 2 events I played in, 3rd and 8th place. So I'm not washed, and I do know what I'm doing. I'm hoping to take that information that I use to make myself better, to hopefully help you guys get better. But, you know, all I can do from YouTube is just talk in front of a camera. You know what I mean? But through Patreon and through Metafy, we have different programs in place to help you guys actually get better at the game. So if that kind of stuff does interest you, the links are in the description. Check them out. You know, and I want to help you actually digivolve your game far past what this series can do. And one last shout out, I want to be able to shout out my Twitch community here. The reason episode 2 took so long to make is because I had all the footage and it got corrupted, so I didn't have time literally to make footage. But the Twitch community is allowing me to kind of do some work from home, which frees up some time so that I can make a video like this. Good, proper videos, which are on the horizon now, which I like to do and which my community will definitely benefit from. So thanks to Twitch chat for being awesome. The community is amazing over there, and you guys on YouTube are great too. So without further ado, let me present to you episode 2, deck building. Enjoy, guys. All right, let's talk about deck building. The whole point of deck building is to come up with a deck of 50 cards, in Digimon's case, that will allow you to compete and fight the other decks that take up the metagame. Just using BT11 for an example, you know, going into the regional, these were the top 3 decks that were on my mind as decks that, okay, I should probably prepare my deck to be able to fight these decks. Now, it doesn't matter if you're playing one of these 3 decks or you're playing something else. The point of the matter is deck building is a tool that allows you to build other tools to combat the meta that you're in. Whether it be mirror matches or other decks, you know, anything like that is fine. And the whole point is to get those tools that best access wins to these decks. So let's take the deck that I played, for instance, Ancient Greymon, the deck that I got 8th place with at regionals. Now, while some people will think this is a glass cannon one-shot deck, you win or you lose, it's not that black and white, as we've learned. You need some kind of intricate play in order to play the deck. Not super intricate, but, you know, enough. There's ways to throw, which we see on stream all the time. But, you know, there are ways that you play this deck properly. But besides that, if your deck is built like garbage, you're not going to beat these decks. You might get lucky, you might beat these decks, but to not go in prepared would be a disservice. So when testing against these decks, you need to start by building your deck, and you need to understand, okay, if I need to beat these 3 decks, what cards can I put in my deck that have the best chances to beat all those decks? And when you're deck building, you want to focus on cards that do address multiple matches that are popular. You know, if you throw in a card that's really good against one deck, and then a card that's really good against another deck, and then a third card that's good against another deck, well, that's nice and all, but who's to say you're going to draw card number 3 for Shoutmon? You might draw it against Beelzemon, and you're like, oh crap, this is useless now. You know what I mean? So it's important that when deck building, you do play cards that are good in a multitude of scenarios. What cards are good in a multitude of scenarios, you might ask? Well, let's take some of the tech cards I played this weekend, or last weekend, like the High Speed Plug-in D. High Speed Plug-in D is actually really freaking good because of jamming, because of it of unblockable as well. These decks play blockers. These decks also have high creature values, like Blast Mode's 14. You can hit an Omni X and play and like get hit 16. You know, this can play Death X is 15. So by having the jamming and unblockable, it's really good. This plays blockers. This plays blockers. This plays blockers out of security, by the way, basically, which is kind of crazy. And while Beelzebub doesn't really have any blockers right now, the jamming is still pretty relevant, I would say, because you don't want to hit Blast Mode. You know what I mean? You don't want to do that. So this is a tech that allowed me to, I'd say, conquer a lot of the matchups that I was in and preparing for, because it does give you that assurance. You know, take other deck cards, for instance. You know, Crimson Blaze. Crimson Blaze is really good and useful against these two decks. It burns certain rogue decks as well, but just talking about the three main decks for a second. You know, if you preemptively Crimson Blaze, they can't put a blocker out of security or a Dorulamon or whatever out of security. If Crimson Blaze a Beel's player, they can't mill up Mons and play things, you know what I mean? Or if Crimson Blaze kill their Bowmon later, then they can't bring back a Beelzemon with it. Doesn't really do much against this deck, unfortunately, but we take 2 out of 3. You know, 2 out of 3 good matchups is better than 1 out of 3 good matchups. And to be honest, there really isn't much here. One of the reasons that we played Ancient Greymon was because of Aldemon, because of Delicate Plan Security. Now, this deck doesn't really play opposite security, but Metal Garurumon definitely can, and Beelzemon definitely does. So it does help you against rogue matchups, and it does help you against 2 of the 3 big decks of the format. It was one of the major draws of playing this deck, is that you can just turn off a lot of options. More and more people are playing removal cards nowadays. You know, maybe not, you know, Crimson Blaze, maybe not Gaia Force per se, but like removal cards are really important right now, and they become more important, I'd argue, next set as well. Maybe I'll do it in a separate video on why removal is so good. If you want that, let me know. But, you know, having access to the removal cards allows your Ancient Greymon deck to control your opponent if you don't have the OTK right away as well. So these are all cards that are multi-purpose cards. You need to think about multi-purpose cards. Yes, you need to build your deck's skeleton. Without the skeleton, your deck will fall apart. But the rest of the cards you play in the deck need to be able to address other matchups and make it so that when you're playing the game, you can actually play the game if you can't play the game. You know what I mean? Once you're certain on your deck choices, you need to test against the meta. Like, what I mean by this is that I didn't test against Machinedramon or Examon or whatever, the Ancient Greymon. Why? Because I know that those are hard L's. I knew that if I fought one of those decks, I was probably losing, and I'd have to try again in the regional 2 weeks later. To be honest, that was just the process that went through my brain, you know? But you test against the meta decks, and if you find out, okay, these are working against these decks, great, I'm doing good. You're ready. If you're not beating these decks, or maybe you're beating 2 of these decks, but you're really struggling against the third, what do? Well, then you have to reevaluate your deck choices and think, okay, is there something else I can throw in my deck that I can use to beat that matchup? Because clearly I need to. And don't stop yourself. Don't say, oh, I have no room, I guess I'm screwed. No, that is the wrong thing to do. You need to be able to be malleable. Because if you let yourself have a bad matchup, especially to like a top 3 deck of the format, you will lose a regionals. You will not win. You will not top. You'll not get your invite. So it's important to make sure that you're flexible. And sometimes being flexible might be cutting your other tech cards for other matchups that are really, really good. That's fine. But you know what I mean? You have to be flexible. If you're not flexible with deck building, you will lock yourself into a wall, and then you don't want to. Then you lose. My final point here is now that all 3 meta decks are in front of us, the big 3, whatever, sure. We understand that you will have, if you play one of these 3 decks, you do have to test the mirror match. The mirror match is incredibly important. You need cards that will help you win the mirror match. You know, in Beelzemon, that could be things like Gazimon, you know what I mean? In Melga, that could be things like Awesome Memory Gain or whatever you want. Shoutmon, it might be things as simple as more Tamers. Like, something I do in my Shoutmon decks, and not a lot of people do, is I play 4 copies of each of these Tamers, for instance. And now you might ask, why do you do that? That's dumb. And I'll tell you that's a good question. Because in the mirror match, these cards are incredibly helpful. This allows you to maybe outdraw in the mirror match, like outdraw your opponent, which could be important. And this is good against everything. You know, this deck likes to OTK you out of nowhere, right? Along with, well, by the way, these decks do too. So hitting a Zenjiro in security while your opponent is playing an OTK turn could just ruin their whole plan, ruin their whole day. Like, I've seen it in testing before, where like you go double blinding ray because you try to make a big push. Okay, then last check Zenjiro, you bring out the blocker, and then they lose. Just like that, easily. So playing certain cards like that will allow you to have better chances against the mirror match. But again, the whole core principle here is you might think something's good, do test it out. And if you're right, you're right. If you're wrong, do adjust. The whole point of deck building is to give yourself the tools to defeat the meta. And that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and we'll see you later. Bye.